Some people like to deep clean every Saturday morning. I prefer to spend a few minutes every day keeping things fresh with Lysol. Lysol's brand new day all-purpose cleaner cleans and kills 99.9% of viruses and bacteria on hard, non-porous surfaces around your home with a fragrance that feels like a tropical getaway for your senses. Don't just clean, Lysol clean.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it, between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
Hey, yo, what's good? Check it out. This your boy, Elder Sensei, one half of the legendary Artifacts. You are right now in tune to my man, Tim Einenkel, at the library on rapstation.com. Let's get it popping, y'all. Artifacts. Peace, Elder Sensei. I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's my man, Duplicate. Sensei.
The Motos project, featuring Elder Sensei's latest album, was and is called Rogue Agents. It dropped late last year, but is an album that should be talked about and blasted from your speakers for a long time. I had a great honor to talk to Elder Sensei, the lyrics behind the album, and I have a great honor to speak to the man behind the beats, El Spitover, producer Luis Duplicuts Reyes. Duplicuts, thanks for joining me on the library with Tim Einenkel.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. I've been a fan now for quite a bit, especially since you guys started rocking the album and playing cuts off of it. I've been listening to, a lot of your interviews, and in particular, I really dug the one with Crooked Eye. I'm a huge Crooked Eye fan, and it's cool because a lot of your interviews, I've mentioned this before, it's like you should do like a inside the rapper studio because it feels like a genuine conversation. It feels like someone, you, the person who's interviewing the artist, it feels like you've done your research, like you actually know about the people that you're interviewing. So, I'm definitely honored to be with yourself being interviewed. It's awesome.
So, the Motos project featuring Elder Sensei, I think a lot of us want to know, how did you and the Sensei link up?
Well, a mutual friend of ours, Soul Wallace, she introduced us, and she was like, hey, if you have some beats laying around, she knew I made beats, and her and Elle go way back, so she was like, hey, if you have some beats, send them over to Elle, have them check them out, and so on and so forth. So I put together a batch of beats and sent them on over, and he liked a bunch of them, and one thing led to another actually pretty quickly. He ended up rapping on about 4 of the beats and was actually kind enough to pull in Craig G to rap on one of the beats.
Craig G, Ella Sensei, Duplicuts, listen. Hey yo, it's Craig G, Duplicuts, Ella Sensei, we smash, it's classic. Hip hop, yeah, we get it drastic. Get your ass kicked if you ever think you're testing us. I got my mic, right now, get your weapons up. Lyrics, skills, the way they come is effortless. Verbally, I smash an MC, just leave it left to us. Look a little closer, you'll never ever get the touch. Switch gears on an MC, now watch me hit the clutch, rip them up. Send for sanitation to come pick them up. Power from my verses have enough strength to lift a truck. Duplicate, duplicuts, break boys. Who or what? Treat them like Cypress Hill. Shoot them up, cause we always represent hip-hop to the fullest with skills. We don't need the guns and bullets, so everybody put your hands up and make noise. Craig G, Ella Sensei, and the break boys. Let's go.
So he sent me back the vocals, and I kind of tinkered away on my own in my own lab. I was living in Vermont at the time, actually. And the EP, which was mixed, recorded, and mastered in 2008, didn't come out until 2009. And we didn't actually meet until after the EP was released. It was on iTunes and the whole deal.
Oh, wow.
By the time he and I met. Yeah. So when he and I met was when I moved down to Jersey in 2009. We hit it off immediately, and we started hanging out and just outside of music, like not even just hanging out in the studio, but going to shows together. And, I'd give him a ride to the airport. He'd come over to my house and we'd have dinner and the whole deal. So we actually started bonding. And I think that's why if you listen to the EP and then go and listen to the album Rogue Agents, that's one of the reasons why it sounds different, is because the dynamic between MC and producer became a lot more intricate. Like, we really got to know each other, and I really got to know what made him tick, and he got to know what made me tick, and we kind of developed our own little shorthand in the studio, and when we talk about beats and rhymes and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the reasons I think, if you listen to those two back to back, they sound different. And it's not to say that, the EP is whack in any way. It's definitely different. There was a mix between hip hop and drum and bass, but then by the time we got around to Rogue Agents, we had ideas, we had a theme going, we had certain threads we wanted to follow and certain points we wanted to hit on. So yeah, that's the story of how Elle and I met originally.
Cool. And I was going to ask this a little later in the interview, but you kind of touched on it a little bit. When producing, as a producer, I guess when producing a beat, how important is it to for Elle, the sensei, for example, how important is it to you to actually, I guess, know who's going to spit on the beat? Just because, I'm wondering, if there's a guy who has let's say, for example, an MC with a bassy voice, I imagine as someone who creates music, you probably then would have less bass in the music, right?
Right. Wow, you listen to music, don't you, Tim?
I do.
But no, you do have a point. Keeping it, relative to Elle and Rogue Agents, if you notice, with Rogue Agents, there's a lot of horns in it, right? There's if you listen to On the Rise, and if you listen to Pass It Off, and there's a lot of brass and major plate. There's a lot of brass in the album in its entirety, and one of the reasons is because, aside from the fact that we wanted to make a statement, right, and brass, horns, trumpets and trombones and saxes, they kind of had this I'm going to make a statement sort of a sound, very celebratory type of a thing. But aside from that, Elle's voice tends to sound very big, very in your face. I recently read on a blog, Elle the Sensei does bully rap, so to speak. I didn't realize, there was such a thing as bully rap. I'm like, Elle's cool, he's not a bully or anything. But I think what the point they're trying to get across is that his voice has a lot of presence, right? So I think the brass is something that also has a lot of presence and complements well. It goes well together, right? And then at the same time, I also use a lot of keys. For some reason, I think the texture of his voice sounds really good, whether it's with a Rhodes or a Hammond or even just a grand piano. It just, depending on how it's played, obviously, it sounds really, really good. There's a certain, when I'm mixing his vocals, there's a certain compressor settings that I use, because I know that when I bring in the bass, his voice is going to be so big that the bass will get, drowned out if I don't mix it right. So actually, there's times when I'm mixing his vocals where I take away a little bit of the bass on his vocals and mix it just right. Sometimes it's hard to tell if you listen. If I do it the rightest way that I can, it's hard to tell that I've taken bass away from his voice. But I do, to make room for the bass line in the songs and room for the bass and the kicks and all that kind of stuff. So you're right. Just to answer your question, there are certain ways I need to approach the beats I'm going to present to him, because I know the texture of his voice, and that goes back to the relationship he and I developed, where we got to know each other, not just as artist and producer, but as people. I kind of got into his head, figure out what he likes, and things of that nature.
Oh, cool. And going back to the EP, I mean, do you feel that? Do you ever feel that you would have loved to redo the EP again, post meeting him? I guess. I mean, do you ever look at it and be like, oh, it would be so much different, and I would have done this, and this, or you just let it, it happened, it happened?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I was just thinking of that recently, only because we plan to do a remix EP to Rogue Agents, and I was thinking, man, what if, I go back and take the original EP and remix the entire thing or redo it, so to speak. I mean, it is what it is, and I'm happy with the way it is. I did a little bit of that with Rogue Agents. The last two songs, if I remember correctly, are actually remixes of the first EP, two songs from the first EP.
Right, yeah.
But I think it would be cool to go back to the EP, knowing what I know now and us knowing what we know of each other, and reinterpret it, so to speak, even if it is the same music, but just do a remix down of the music and maybe add a couple of elements and switch some things around. I think it would be interesting, especially in this day and era where you have all these different reinterpretations of original things, like with movies, they keep doing the same Batman over and over, they keep doing the same Spider-Man over and over. Well, why couldn't you do that with, with music, a reinterpretation or a reimagining of a piece of work, So I think it would be cool to do that.
That's dope.
Yeah. We gonna try something. We gonna try this. Stupendous mouth off, right hand and not the southpaw. Able to rock glass jaws, stature lean, 6 foot dream. Stance in the crowds, battle ready for my team.
I want to go to the. We're talking about Rogue Agents, and I want to go to one of the first songs that you guys, you and Elle, kind of quote unquote chiseled during the recording process of the album, which was On the Rise.
Yeah. Immortals, Part 2. Yes. More Jersey-ish. Duplicuts, Elder Sensei. Let's go. Immortalized, revered. Lyrics are commandeered, necessary and flawless. We sip coffee, get out of here. Me and Duper like beer and piffery, special delivery. Favorite Decatur mini specifically.
How did that track come together? And also, as a producer, what did you want listeners to get from this track?
Man, for me, that's one of my favorite tracks. One of the reasons is because it was the very first song that we decided to do. I think, and I always say this, Elle, I'm super fortunate to work with someone like him because when I approached him about doing Rogue Agents, he hadn't even heard any of the tracks that I had done. He was just like, yep, sure, sign me up. Cool, let's do it. Like, he didn't know where I was at mentally or what direction I wanted to go in artistically. He was just like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So one of the first tracks that he heard, the new batch of beats that I was making, was On the Rise. And it's funny, Elle has a certain laugh, and I'm not going to imitate it because, first of all, I think he'd be, upset. But he has a certain laugh that he'll do when he's into something. Okay. And when he did that laugh, when he was listening to the beat, like auditioning different beats, and he heard that one, and he did that laugh, I'm like, oh, I think I got him with this one. So, and the cool thing was, I didn't frame it for him. I didn't say, okay, so on this one, what I want to do is X, Y, Z. Some of the beats, I would kind of give some direction and then just let him run with it. Okay. Others, I would just let him do. I was like, just do you, do whatever you want to do. And that was one of those songs where I was just like, okay, you like it, go ahead, rock with it, do whatever you want to do with it. The only thing I told him was, like, I wasn't going to do a scratch hook on it. You just got to, just write a hook, just do whatever you want. And I think it came out beautifully. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, that song really did set the tone for the rest of the album, because when he heard the beat, he was like, dude, this doesn't sound at all like the EP. And I was like, yeah, I don't want it to sound like the EP. I want it to sound different. I wanted to make a statement to say, hey, that was the EP, guys. Okay, we introduced ourselves to the world. Now watch how we'll flip it to something else and give you something that you didn't, you weren't expecting from us. So
that's cool. And you just mentioned, you said, On the Rise, you wanted that to make a statement. So I'm just curious, but On the Rise is not the first track of the album. Let's Get It is featuring Set Out X. So I'm curious, with that being the first track of the album, what statement were you making there?
So it's funny because On the Rise was not only was it the first song we recorded, but because it has this like boisterous, big opening, right, with the horns, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be the first song on the album. It's gonna be great. We're gonna come in, gangbusters, bust the doors open, make the statement, cool. And then, as more songs were recorded, I started having second thoughts. I'm like, do I want to make it the first one? Do I want to make it in the middle? Do I want to put On the Rise still in the beginning? Who knows? So then, the version you hear of Let's Get It on the album is entirely different than the version that was recorded as far as the music goes. That was actually one of the last songs I mixed for the album because I got Sadat to do some vocals, right? I was like, hey, I need a hook. You don't have to do something that rhymes. You can just be picking up L. Actually, I want you to talk on the hook. And this was while they were recording the XL album, right? So he goes in there and he's like, this is L, my man Duplicuts, my man L. Y'all gotta watch, y'all coming in. You know what he does on the songs. So when he's doing the hook, I'm like, oh man, this sounds cool. This sounds good. Actually, wait a minute. This sounds like it could be the introduction to the album because huge shout out to Sadat because he held us down on the album. He appears several times throughout the album. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make this the first song on the album. And then there's an interview that kind of like an interview / breaking down of our songs that Elle and I recorded just before the album came out. We did like a couple of videos. And so I took some audio from the videos that we did and put it at the end of that song. And it was funny because I didn't tell Elle about that song literally until the album was just about to come out. It was like literally 2 days before the album came out.
Nice.
And I was like, hey, are you by your email? He's like, yeah. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna send you something. He's like, all right, cool. So I sent it to him. He's like, yo, when do we do this? And I was like, yeah, I just kind of remixed it about a week ago, and I got Sadat to do some. He's like, yo, this sounds great. This sounds awesome. So yeah, originally On the Rise was the first song, and then, like I said, as the process continued, we recording our album, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to make it the first song. I think I'm going to make Let's Get It the first song. So I redid the whole beat. The rhymes are still the same. The order in which he laid down his verse is still the same. But then I was like, man, I don't have the hook. So I got Sadat to come in once again, and he held us down lovely. So once again, huge shout out to Dottie X for holding us down the whole album.
That's cool, and that's real cool to know that that last part of him just talking is something obviously you created because it actually is one of my favorite parts, I think, of the album, where it's just like it's like totally it kind of like puts the exclamation on the intro track.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah, and that was part of the point. Like, it sets you up for what we thought about and what Elle thinks about the album and why you should check it out. And like he even says it himself, hey, not everyone, there's still people out there who don't know about me. This is Dupe, we're doing this album, and, join us. And I think it's a perfect way to start the album.
Cool. I want to talk about the track Major Play featuring Sadat X.
Added up more than 16, spit mean, first team, 32 lines investing, incline, written out for collaboration, maturation, saturating, market that's evaporating, music is aspirating, I don't simply have the patience to entertain or indulge to listen to what y'all making, me and X be ready, passport stamps, heavyweight, run it down in every state, have bait, steady.
El Decente has said that this is a beat that his fan base wouldn't expect to hear him on. So I'm just curious, was it from your point of view, was there any hesitation to create this beat? And as a producer, do you have to consider what the MC's fan base is used to hearing them on, or do you not really consider that?
Damn it, you and your good ass questions. I think initially, and when I say initially, I mean going back to the EP, I wasn't thinking about L's fan base. And so that's why on the EP you hear straight ahead hip hop, you hear drum and bass, you hear there's a song on there that's just strictly an instrumental song. There isn't even any rhyming on it. But with Rogue Agents, it was definitely a lot more strategized. I thought of his fan base in the sense of, I do want them to hear him on what would quote-unquote be a traditional LB, but at the same time, let's challenge them a little bit. Not necessarily alienate them, but let's challenge them a little bit, throw them off. Like, as soon as they hear the beat, they're like, oh, wait a minute, L's going to rap on us? Okay, let me stick around and see what the heck is going to unfold, because I've never heard L rap over something like this. So, to answer your question, yes, I was mindful of the fan base, but I didn't let that box me in entirely and completely. And so I think that's why Major Play, in my opinion, works so well, because no, it isn't a beat that you would immediately think of Elder Sensei when you hear it, but at the same time, when you hear him flow on it, in my opinion, when you hear them go back to back, it's like, okay, this works. I mean, I'll tell you what, when I was in the studio and I heard those two rapping over it, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be one of my favorite tracks, and the album's not even done yet, but this is going to be one of my favorite cuts on the album, because when you're in the studio with them, you watch L write, you won't hear him rap. You just hear him, you just see him, writing and bobbing his head up and down. With Sadat, you can hear what the flow is going to be, but he's not saying the words, right? So it's almost like a mock rhyming that you hear him. So you hear him go, so you're like, okay, well, what the heck is going to be saying? Because I hear the flow, but I don't hear the words yet, right? And then they go into the booth, and when they're spitting it, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, this is going to be insane. I was like a kid in the candy store, literally, when I was in the studio. I was so freaking happy. But yeah, to answer your question, like I said, I didn't let their respective fan bases completely box me into what I was going to do. But I did decide to kind of like, okay, I want to challenge a little bit their fan base, not alienate them, but just challenge them just enough.
When you're creating a beat, how important is it for you to, I guess, agree with the lyrics that the MC is spitting?
That's a fine line to walk, right? So you want to, as a producer and just as a creative, you want to allow the artist to feel unencumbered and say, okay, you know what, I can't really, the same way that I was able to freely create music should be the way that you should freely create verses and lyrics and your side of the songwriting. At the same time, there are times where, depending on, and of course, depending on who you're dealing with, but depending on the subject matter, as a producer, executive producer, you need to be able to gently guide, if you will. I've been fortunate enough that, when you're dealing with a Kool Keith, a Sadat, or JR, Ella Sensei, and Eternal Quest, they're professionals to the point where I can just give them a couple of sentences. If I indeed have an idea for a song, I say, they'll say, oh, so what are you looking for in this one, Dupa? And I can just say, you know what? Like, take Pass It Off, for example. That's a perfect example.
L, you got next?
Nah, let me pass it off. Question you up next? Nah, let me pass it off. Yo, who up next? Jersey never raps off.
John Robinson, Duplicuts, set it off. Hard Jersey, Reddit, don't forget it. Also got the BX and Far Rock in my spirit, don't get it twisted. Tri-State Ryan Grace kicking up ballistics. Tundra like Blizzard, microphone wizard.
We were going to record that. I told them, hey guys, I have an idea for this. Let's do like a back and forth type of thing, especially on the chorus, where you guys are just passing it off to one another. And I literally said passing it off. And L was like, all right, cool, got it. And he ran with it. And that ended up being actually the name of the song. I was planning it for it to be that way, but that ended up being the name of the song.
On your brain if you couldn't bring the fans pleasure. Man, it's another rhyme blitz, what? Don't try to figure the styles, God. We switch it up. L, you got next?
Nah, let me pass it off. Yeah, you up next.
Nah, let me pass it off.
Yo, who up next? Jersey never raps off.
I queue up next, so let me set it off.
For me, I find that if I give just enough direction, it allows for room for them to be themselves, while at the same time, you know, the ship is being guided, so to speak, in the right direction.
Actually, I wanted to ask you about "Pass It Off" because it is actually, I think, one of my favorite. I have many favorite tracks on this album, and I'm sure they're going to change tomorrow. But "Pass It Off," I think, is just like, I mean, it just, everything about that just seems, I mean, it just works. Like, you know, like L passing it off, you know, like to J.R. Robinson, to Internal Quest, but then also the beat is kind of, they're all seamless. Can you just talk about the creation of that track?
That, as far as the beat goes, there's a song called "Losing Out" by Black Milk, featuring Royce the 5'9".
Okay.
So the beat is actually an inspiration from Black Milk. When I heard that Black Milk song, I'm like, dude, what the hell were you thinking? What were you on when you made this? So when I heard that, I'm like, okay, I got to make something right now. Like, literally, when I heard that song, I'm like, okay, I got to make something right now. So I wanted it to be something that was, like, as soon as you heard it, I definitely wanted no one to mistake where we were from. Like, I literally wanted it to sound like an East Coast track. And I wanted it to be in your face. I wanted it so that when the beat came in, you were like, oh my God, wait, what's that? Like, there's tracks that you hear that you can hear in the background, and you're growing with it, you know, it's mellow, it's cool or whatever. And then there's tracks that, you know, kind of stop you in your tracks. And my idea was for that song to be one of those songs. And I was like, guys, I just want you to go in on the beat. Like, there's no huge otherworldly, highbrow, conceptual type of thing. I just want you to go in, do what Jersey MCs do best, literally, and just attack the beat and annihilate it. And I'm super fortunate and super happy with the results. I think everyone came through with flying colors, and it was the first time that I've worked with JR, and I've met him before, but I've never actually had the pleasure of working with him. And tell me, when I got the vocals back, I told him, I'm like, the texture and the tone in your voice, I think it's fantastic, and the way they play off of each other, especially on the choruses, I think it worked out. I think it worked out great. It was fantastic. So yeah, I mean, that's how the beat came about as far as the inspiration behind it, and then, you know, the direction that I gave the guys was just go in. This is a little break from the espionage spy theme that we're doing in the album, and we're just going to go in. So, and I'm super happy with the results because they came through with flying colors in my opinion.
Sorry, I put the grasp exposed pythons. You can't tell me this when I'm rocking with icons. So everybody in the game now second nature. David Stern, I don't really know which players. Catch me on the mic, MP or the faders. You ain't the jerk, then I owe you no favors. Amber Rose Dome, clean off the top, Shaq and 92, white boy beating up the box. Spiritual but residuals make me say it's gonna take $1 to make me change.
What you up next?
Nah, let me pass it off. Jay, you up next?
Nah, let me pass it off.
Yo, who up next? Jersey never raps off. Yo, I'm up next. L, set it off. When it comes to all out bravado, we start to engage. Marvel out engage, be hard-headed display. Style built in ways and trained to obtain. Flowing propane, soul vein coming after post-game. All confident team play, we dominant. This to save Jersey and every follower sponsoring. Never buy a product, we concentrated to filter it. Make a script coded for writers who try to pilfer it. Stick to the gun, stick to the program. Stick to the sick, grammar spitting more grams. Tried and true and climbing every obstacle. I'm flicking out cause the chances are impossible. Constable of rock, chaining down felons. Lie telling it wrong for music that you're selling. J.R. and Quest, they joining up resistance. Duplicate signature and since they got assistance.
L, you got next?
Nah, let me pass it off. Quest, you up next?
Nah, let me pass it off. Jay, you up next?
Nah, let me pass it off.
Duplicuts on the beat, set it off.
When your space has the long-lasting, noticeable scent of Airwick Vibrant Scented Oils, it'll be the spot for everyone. From book club to game night, the kids can even host their friends.
Whoa, it smells amazing.
Airwick Vibrant Scented Oils are infused with 2 times more natural essential oils versus regular Airwick Scented Oils for our most authentic, nature-inspired fragrance experience. Transform your space with scents like white sage and mahogany or lavender and water lily. Now that's a breath of fresh air wick.
Meet the next generation of podcast stars with SiriusXM's Listen Next program, presented by State Farm. As part of their mission to help voices be heard, State Farm teamed up with SiriusXM to uplift diverse and emerging creators. Tune in to Stars and Stars with Issa, as host Issa Nakazawa dives into birth charts of her celeb guests. This is just the start of a new wave of podcasting. Visit statefarm.com to find out how we can help prepare for your future. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.